This 2024 AFC South Season Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code The Machine and score up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
It as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Here to get into another season division preview. Today, we'll be talking about the AFC South for our season player prop for the upcoming season. We're now past the halfway point of our division previews here. So again, if you haven't listened to the previous four division previews for our season player props, plenty of time left to do that before NFL Week 1 does roll around. And like I mentioned today, we'll get into the AFC South. But joining me here to help me break everything down for the AFC South, got my guy here with me as usual. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up, Munaf? What's up, Munaf? It's a beautiful Tuesday where I am in Virginia, and I can't complain at all. The weather's nice. We're getting day and day closer to the start of the kickoff of the NFL season, and excited to jump into like you said, AFC South today. Let's do it.
Yeah, 100%. Should be another intriguing division here. A lot of young talent, I guess we can say, mixing with some veterans. And I mean young talent really at the quarterback position in this division. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of buzz about my guy, CJ Stroud, coming off of his rookie season. Trevor Lawrence, with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Tennessee Titans making their shift in the post Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill era. And looks like they will be led by Will Levis for the Titans. And then we talk about the Indianapolis Colts that will have Anthony Richardson back under center, who had a very, very short season last year, dealing with, I believe, a shoulder injury last year for Anthony Richardson. So he should be back and ready to go for NFL Week 1 for the Colts there. So a lot of intrigue in this division. It was a lot of fun, looking into it as well. I mean, yeah, it's close to me because I am, a Texans fan and very familiar with the division here. But Chris, I want to get your thoughts on the AFC South just in general. When you were kind of looking at this division, what were your thoughts for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think it's not, from a player prop perspective, it's not my favorite.
I understand.
But when I'm looking at totality, I think starting, I guess you started the cream of the crop, which is what you talked about. Your Houston Texans projected to win 9.5 games this season, projected to win the division again after going 10-7 last season. And like you said, CJ Stroud, coming on the scene. But also, it kind of feels like you guys pushed all your chips in the middle of the table with DeMeco Ryans already. Going out and getting the Stephon Diggs, you having Daniel Hunter come over in free agency as well. It's a lot of strides that you guys have made. So the Houston Texans, although it is just a second year, quarterback with CJ Stroud being there, I mean, you guys are supposed to be really, really well. I know we talked about it, in some earlier episodes, but there aren't a lot of value, if you're betting on your Houston Texans because they are projected to do so well. When I think about the Indianapolis Colts and Shane Steichen there, and how much he was able to make of that team last season, they finished 9-8. Primarily with a backup quarterback the whole season. So, second year offensive coordinator being there, defensive coordinator's been there for a couple years now. So hopefully they can get some kind of chemistry and camaraderie, but it really just lies on the production that you get from Anthony Richardson, which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about him a little bit more in detail throughout the show. They also have a pretty easy schedule, but they do have some difficult opponents that's going to be coming into Indianapolis. But going 9-8 last year, just was kind of remarkable. So hats off to Shane Steichen. When I think about Jacksonville, I think about them taking a step back, as I think we kind of projected last season. If had a banged up quarterback, of course, with Trevor Lawrence kind of he played a lot of games, but he was injured for, some knick-knack injuries throughout. I'm interested to see what that offense looks like because you still have ETN back there, but the wide receiver depth has changed just a tad bit with them going out and grabbing a wide receiver from free agency, grabbing another one from the draft. And then can they bolster up that offensive line? I think that's going to be important for them as well. Trevor Lawrence, I think it's fair to say he took a step back last season, but we'll see if he can produce this season. They are predicted to win about 8.5 games and finish second behind your Tennessee Titans, behind your Houston Texans. And then we get into the Tennessee Titans, which I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to be, a bunch of plays call. I'm just not sure if how much I'm really wanting to trust it. We talk about new, and head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator, all new over there in Tennessee. Handing the keys off to Will Levis as well. We'll see how he'll do. But I mean, this team, primarily typically finishes at the bottom of the division. Only went 6-11 last season. I think 7-10 back in 2022. So yeah, they projected to finish last in the division, and I think I would kind of agree with that, especially with an aging DeAndre Hopkins. You do get Calvin Ridley coming over, so maybe a little bit more of excitement through the passing game because haven't been really that exciting throughout the passing game. They typically been just a team that puts their head down, run the ball, old school style football. So we'll see how it goes, but I do think it's you guys' division to lose. And maybe that's exactly what Jacksonville needs is for them not to be the favorite. Everybody doesn't perform well as the favorite, So we'll see how it goes. But what were your biggest takeaways in the division and how you kind of see things playing out this season so far?
Yeah, I think for the Texans, I mean, obviously a lot of hype coming in because, like you mentioned, right, they kind of put all their chips in over the course of the past two off seasons, starting with the draft last year with CJ Stroud, then trading up to number 3 to get Will Anderson Jr. And then this offseason, right, you went out and got Joe Mixon, and then you traded for Stephon Diggs. So, a lot of people are comparing this team to that Cincinnati Bengals team that made that run to the Super Bowl. But, obviously as a fan, you're excited for it, but I think I'm more a little bit cautiously optimistic about this team. There's still some holes with the Texans, some linebacker depth, the backup running back position there as well. Some questions in the secondary outside of Derek Stingley Jr. So, excuse me. So we'll see if it transpires and they're able to put it all together for this Texans team. Do I think they're warranted to be the odds-on favorite on paper for this division? I think so, right? With the talent that you have around CJ Stroud, and I think that the one concern I still probably do have a little bit is going to be if this offensive line is going to be able to stay healthy for the Texans because they've had a lot of guys that have been in and out on that line and just all together in totality have not been able to stay healthy together and kind of develop that chemistry. There's something I'm looking at. Outside of the Texans, you nailed it that last year what Shane Steichen was able to do with his cold steam when Anthony Richardson went down with pretty much Gardner Minshew. I mean, they were a 4th down conversion away from then being the AFC South champions last year. I know it came down to that final game or final couple of weeks between the Texans and the Colts to find out who was going to win this division. And now you get Anthony Richardson back, who's going to be healthy. And we'll see what he's able to do coming off of those injuries because, he's a talented player, right? He can utilize his legs. He can throw the football, obviously, as well. And you have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield for the Indianapolis Colts as well. And they do still have one of the better offensive lines in the league prior to. Now that's kind of changed a little bit for this team because you take a look at the PFF rankings, 3 of the bottom 5 teams as far as offensive line are in this division. That's the Tennessee Titans, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans, who are projected to have one of the worst offensive lines. So we'll see what transpired for this team. I think Colts are still consistent at number 6 overall, according to PFF on their offensive line rankings. So possibly could be a big year for both Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor in this division, at least running the football here. So I know we'll expand on that a little bit more here as we do get into our player props here for the AFC South. But before we do that, let me tell everyone about the Sports Gambling Podcast merch store. 10% off of everything in the merch store up until NFL Week 1. So make sure you guys get over there, check it out. store.sportsgamblingpodcast.com. You copy some NBA gambling podcast merch, some MLB gambling podcast merch, whether there's a coffee mug, t-shirts, hoodies. They have it all over on the website on the merch store. That's store.sportsgamblingpodcast.com. 10% off of everything with promo code football. Plus, make sure you guys check out the college football experience and the sports gambling podcast as they get you ready for week 0 that does kick off this weekend for college football, plus futures picks from the guys there as well. So again, make sure you guys tune in for college football picks kicking off this week with the sports gambling podcast and the college football experience. All right, Chris, let's get into it here, man. Let's get into our player props here for the AFC South division. Where are you taking us for your first player prop?
So we'll start in Tennessee. And I'm looking at Will Levis. I like his passing yards to go over. It's pretty simple to me. I think he played a handful of games last season, played 9 last season, and ended up passing for just 1,800 yards last season, only 7 yards per attempt. But I like the weapons. If I like knowing that he's gonna go in and be the starter, you got weapons of big weapons like Calvin Ridley coming over, right? We mentioned him leaving the divisional foe, the Tennessee Titans. You got DeAndre Hopkins still there, and granted he's towards the later part of his career, but I still think he feels like he got something to prove as well. And then I love the addition of Taylor Boyd as well. So I think he has some really good offensive weapons over there. And Nick Foles, the offensive coordinator that's coming over, he also comes over from Jacksonville, where he was the one of very 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 bright offensive minded coach, was the offensive coordinator there. And then I look at that backfield. I don't see a lot of production coming from that backfield specifically, right? We're not, I wouldn't say we're anti Tony Pollard, but we're not the biggest Tony Pollard supporters on myself and yourself. And I don't think that he's going to have a big season this year. The other thing I wanted to throw out real quick is just the Titans schedule. They're projected to face the 6th hardest schedule in the this season. So when I'm thinking about that, the first thing that jumps out to me is who does this Tennessee Titan team play early, well, not even necessarily early in the season, but what pass defenses do they play against? You got the Jets in there, you got Green Bay, Buffalo, Detroit. Like, these are outside of Detroit pass defense is not great, but it's some pretty good rush defenses in there. And I just think that Will Levis is going to have to get up and over this number. If I do see it juiced, not a lot of juice, minus 115 on Caesars, but this is close to 3,500 on other books. So a lot of people already been betting it up and over the total, which is where I would agree. I just kind of feel like if the Titans are going to do anything, I think it starts with Will Levis and not out of this backfield. So I'll take him as my quarterback prop to go up and over 3,350 and a half passing yards. Start us off.
Yeah, I can talk you off, right? It's with the wide receiving group there, right? Calvin Ridley comes over from the Jacksonville Jaguars. DeAndre Hopkins, I know, had an injury a few weeks ago, but it seems like he's going to be ready to go for week 1 for the Titans. And Tyler Boyd coming over from the Bengals, right, where he was there for so many years, with that passing offense, and Joe Burrow when he was healthy, and the guys that were there as well. So yeah, and it's also the fact that not a lot of excitement in the backfield. Tajay Spears, we saw some flashes of him when he was behind Derrick Henry. Does he get more snaps now? You talked about Tony Pollard there as well. So I like it. Yeah, I know Sean touted Will Levis to have possibly lead the league in passing yards this upcoming season. That was around 70-1 when they gave it out. I think this now down to maybe 45-1, 50-1 in that area. So, and I think the key thing that you did mention there, that again, they do face one of the harder schedules, and that if they are going to be trailing in these games in that fourth quarter, they're going to have to throw the football a little bit. And I think that's where the yardage will really rack up for a guy like Will Levis. Right now on the depth chart, unofficially until the season does start, it's Mason Rudolph. That's the backup quarterback, and they also obviously still have Malik Willis back there as well. He's slated as to be the 3rd string quarterback for this Titans team. All right, for my first player prop here, I will go over to the cold side of things for Mr. Anthony Richardson. I'm looking at the under on his passing touchdowns for this upcoming season. And a couple things here, what I mentioned earlier when we're talking about just the AFC South in general, is that the Colts do come in this season with the sixth best offensive line ranking according to PFF. And what does that tell me? That hey, maybe it's going to be a lot of it will be Jonathan Taylor. Anthony Richardson can utilize his legs there as well. But I really haven't been sold on just the depth at the wide receiver and tight end positions for the for the Indianapolis Colts, right? I've been a huge supporter of Michael Pittman Jr. on the Propcast, whether I've taken his receptions to go over or whether it's been his yardage to go over. But outside of that, it just kind of feels like they're just trying to plug and play. I mean, you saw flashes from guys last year, whether it was for a game or two, but at least for season long, I'm just not really sold on it. So I feel like this team is going to continue to be a run first offense, led by Jonathan Taylor in that offensive line. 18 and a half, I thought it was a little bit too much for him, for Anthony Richardson. And you took a look at last year. I want to say he, in the 4 games or the couple games that he did play last year, I want to say he only had 4 passing touchdowns, right? So I think it'll be more run heavy for Anthony Richardson. And then let's just say, God forbid, he for whatever reason gets injured again or it misses some significant time for the Indianapolis Colts. You take a look at who their backup quarterback is right there. It's Joe Flacco. That's a great insurance policy to have. We saw last year with Cleveland what he was able to do, Joe Flacco, and win comeback player of the year. Last year, in the 4 games that he did play, Anthony Richardson only had 3 passing touchdowns. Was a little bit inconsistent there. So until I see some improvement from that wide receiver group here for the Colts, I'm going to continue fading Anthony Richardson, at least on his passing touchdowns. He could have a phenomenal year utilizing his legs, but I think 18 and a half is a bit steep for me. So I'm going to go Anthony Richardson under 18 and a half passing touchdowns here, Chris.
Yeah, I like him. If I had a honorable mention, it wasn't anything that I was locked in yet, but Anthony Richardson over his 9.5 interceptions. I'm not quite sold yet either. So we definitely are in agreement on Anthony Richardson. He looking at Anthony Richardson last season, like you said, he missed so much time, and like you said, sometimes these quarterbacks get hurt early and it continues to follow them. Hopefully it doesn't for Anthony Richardson. We hope to see him out there on the field, but I do think that they will utilize the services of Jonathan Taylor a little bit more, which also correlates with one of my player props. I'm going under on one of his wide receivers we'll talk about in just a few minutes, but yeah, up until he proves it, I also looked at, did some deep diving into Anthony Richardson. He had a 59.5% completion rate before he got injured last season, which was second worst out of any quarterback at the time he went down. I think that was like week 6. And like you said, he only played 4 games last season. Those type things don't typically bode well for success. I think we see short plays here, and I think we see Anthony Richardson struggle in, I guess, what we could call almost his rookie season all over again. Yeah. So yeah, right there with you, taking his touchdowns under. Like it.
All right, before we get into our next round of player props here, let me tell everyone about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy Pick'em gives you a chance to win 1,000 extra entry or play fantasy football the right way with Best Ball. Best Ball Mania is live with 15 million in prizes. You can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to 1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you guys use that promo code MACHINE. And don't forget about the greatest sports handicapping contest happening over at Circa Sports. Circa Sports is back with Circa Millions and Circa Survivor, giving away 16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win your office Survivor pool but didn't enter the Circa Survivor. If you don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas yet before football, Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go. Still time to get out there, hang with Ryan and Sean, and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sports book in the world from August 22nd through August 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% off of your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 off with promo code SGP and get a free hat. Again, go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 off with promo code SGP and receive a free hat. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, man. Take us into your next player prop.
So we'll stay with the theme of the Indianapolis Colts, and I'll go. I know you were pretty high on him last season, but I'll go Michael Pittman. I'm going under on his receiving yards. Number comes in at just a little over 1,025 and a half receiving yards, and this is a little bit juiced towards the under as well. -125 is the best number I could find. But if you want to play the over, you could get a lower number as well. Michael Pittman, I'm also a fan. If this guy continues to play really, really well for the Indianapolis Colts, he continues to exceed expectations year after year. He ended up catching 109 passes last season and went north of 1,150 yards. But in the time spent with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, they did not look well at all. If you add that to Anthony Richardson, short passes, he was bottom 5. I won't bore you guys with all the numbers, but he was bottom 5 in completion percentage depth, right? So he didn't throw the ball, far down the field.
Yeah.
I think having Jonathan Taylor back also helps a lot because he missed so many games last season because of injury. Was a holdout at the beginning of the season, and then he ended up having season-ending injury as well. I think he'll be the focal point. You kind of mentioned it already at the top of the show, but I think Anthony Richardson legs will be utilized a little bit more, along with Jonathan Taylor legs, who is still, relatively young. I think this is fourth Jonathan Taylor going into his 4th season. And then I think Sean Steichen as a head coach, if he enjoys running the football, right? We got to remember he comes over from the Philadelphia Eagles, where he was the offensive play caller over there. And we remember the Philadelphia Eagles being a well-balanced attack. So I think we see a little bit more of that. There's also the sentiment that we talk about a lot on this show as well of Michael Pittman just got paid. He just signed a 3-year, $70 million contract extension this offseason. You bring in Mitchell as well, who's a speedster that can take away some of those deep shots to somebody like Pittman deep and down the field. So yeah, I like it. I mentioned Anthony Richardson only having a 59.5% completion rate before he was injured, which was second worst in the NFL at that time as well. So I just think we see a step back from Michael Pittman because, like I said, I think it'll be a lot of running the ball, a lot of handing the ball off, a lot of RPOs for Anthony Richardson out of that backfield as the quarterback, and utilizing his feet a little bit more. So I'll take Pittman to go under. Thinking that he stays around between 950, maybe 1,000, but I don't think he goes up and over the number.
So when I'm looking at Michael Pittman's numbers for the 4 seasons that he's been in the NFL, you take a look at his yards per catch average. It's only 10.9. Right? That doesn't really excite you when you're supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver for a team. And then we talk about some of the elite guys. Those numbers for guys like Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, those numbers are those yards per catch numbers are absolutely through the roof. But it's not there for Michael Pittman. And maybe it's been because of the quarterbacks that he's played with throughout his career. And I think that for Anthony Richardson, it's going to continue to be something that he's going to struggle with. I think something what we saw early on, just developing chemistry with wide receivers and things like that. But it seems like that Michael Pittman Jr., he's not really a downfield threat, right? And maybe he's not really having a lot of success creating that separation. You take a look his rookie year. I'm not going to take a lot away from that because he only played in 13 games and it was his rookie year, 503 yards. This sophomore year, second year, 17 games he did play in, 1,082 receiving yards. 2022, 16 games, 925 yards. Last season was a year where he did get over 1,100 yards for the first time in his career at 1,152. So I think teams will pay more attention to a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. He's definitely still going to get the targets. And I think last season or the season prior, I was over on his receptions because I know the targets are going to be there. Just we're not sure. We're not so sure if the yardage is going to be there for a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. And honestly, it hasn't been there throughout his career. When we're looking at 11 yards per reception for Michael Pittman Jr. throughout his career here. So I think with that and how we talked about this offensive line still being improved and still being one of the best in the league, and having two running options in the backfield with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, I think that might take a little bit away, at least from the yardage perspective, for a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. So I'm right there with you for Michael Pittman Jr. When you do get a chance here, Chris, let me know if you see his receptions number for Michael Pittman Jr. while I get into my next one here for this AFC South division. We talked about the Titans. I'm going to go back there, and you mentioned the one guy that we're not high on, and I'm not high on him coming into this year. That's going to be Tony Pollard. I'm taking the under on his rushing yards. And look, we talk about what Derrick Henry meant to this organization. I mean, just the absurd numbers that he was putting up, honestly, sometimes on a weekly basis, and what he's been able to do throughout his career. I think that's going to be some very, very hard shoes to fill. And I think that number one, that really what stuck out to me is that Tony Pollard went from the Dallas Cowboys, who had one of the better offensive lines over the past several seasons, to now going to, like I mentioned earlier, to having one of the worst offensive lines. So Dallas coming into this year are still top 10 in offensive line rankings according to PFF. But you take a look at the Tennessee Titans, like I mentioned, 3 of the teams in this division are going to be bottom 5, and that's led. One of those teams is the Tennessee Titans, where they're ranked number 28. We'll see what they get out of Tajay Spears. They try to mix him in last season with Derrick Henry. Maybe he does have a bigger workload coming into this season as well. But I feel like Tony Pollard is more well suited being a pass catching running back, and I think we've seen those opportunities, what he's been able to do when he's utilized out of the backfield. I'm going to take the under that number right there for Tony Pollard. There is a number of 775.5, but that's juiced to minus 155. So I took a little bit of juice off of it, settled at 725.5. That'll get you around minus 115 for Tony Pollard. So I'm going under on his his rushing yards this season for the Tennessee Titans. So Tony Pollard under 725.5 rushing yards here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, this perfectly correlates with Will Levis to go over him. If you talk about a changing of the guards, man, this is going to be a Hall of Famer, in his own right with Derrick Henry, and now you're replacing him with somebody that the Tennessee Titans are going to be like, who is this guy? I think it's also pretty telling. So it's 2 things that you hit on one thing you hit on that I wanted to mention, but the other thing, real quick, is that this number, like you said, you got a 725. Why is the number so low? If he's at 1,000 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty telling in itself. And we've talked about how those lines can kind of tell us the story and paint us a picture. So I love that. And then I think the biggest thing that if you're not handicapping this on a year in and year out basis as you do, you don't understand the difference between those offensive lines. Like, this is not the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. The Tennessee Titans would have, been great. And Derrick Henry probably would still be in the Tennessee Titans jersey if, he was still running behind a really great offensive line. We gave out some of those numbers when we talked about Derrick Henry and we talked about the Baltimore Ravens earlier. But those 2 things definitely would make me lean more towards an under. And I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot as well, which is going to lead to them throwing the football even more. So definitely in agreement with you on Tony Pollard going under the 725.5. And real quick, you mentioned Pittman Jr. This is also intriguing to me. That number for Michael Pittman Jr. on receptions for the full season. So you can get an 85.5 to go over at minus 112, or you can get an 87.5 to go under. So for him not to have 88 receptions, which the biggest intrigue, the most intriguing part for me in there is he's gone over this in 3 straight seasons. He had 109 last season, 99 2 years ago, and 88 the year before that. So why is the number so low for Michael Pittman? So hopefully that translates to if you get there with his receptions under, hopefully it does translate to his receiving yards to go under as well.
And also, you just kind of want to go back to Pittman. Like, it's not his fault because it's just been a quarterback carousel for the Indianapolis Colts ever since Andrew Luck decided to abruptly retire, right? And he's gone from Carson Wentz, uh, Phillip Rivers was in there, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken. And last season with Gardner Minshew. So it's been tough sledding for him. So, and again, he's still been able to get the receptions, but again, it's not his fault when he's had these old guys that can maybe throw down the field and get him the football. But I think there's still concerns for us right now, just kind of
Carson
going back
Wentz,
yeah. So it's like, man, you feel bad for the guy, but he's still doing his best to put up the numbers. And we'll see if they're able to, or he's able to develop that chemistry going forward with Anthony Richardson, who seems like he is going to be the long-term solution at quarterback for this team, barring health, of course. But it's nothing against Pittman. It's just the quarterbacks that he's had throughout his career. That he hasn't really able to get the yardage, but the receptions and the targets have definitely been there for a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. All right, Chris, before we get into our third round of player props here for the AFC South division, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Rhythm. Football season is here, and college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. Decide what stats matter the most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. Rhythm already has you covered from NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. Hey, look, we're getting to that point of the year where obviously football season is approaching. In fact, college football kicks off this weekend, like I mentioned. We still have MLB season going on. And you want to get out to some of these events or some of these ball games, and you just you've had a really, really bad experience trying to find tickets and that ticket buying experience on these apps. Because let's face it, some of these apps can be really, really frustrating to get through. They charge you double the amount of your ticket by the time you go to check out, with all the extra fees and the hidden fees that they give you at the end of that when you go to check out. But Game Time tells you everything up front, and that's why I love using Game Time. Game Time is also an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And maybe it's not for a sporting event, right? Maybe you have a theater show that's going on in your area, a comedy show that you probably want to get out to, a music concert, whatever the case might be. Let Game Time take all that stress away from you, and let them make it a flawless experience for you. They have last-minute deals. You can save 60% off of buying tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. They even have flash deals. You can save even more with in exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you with their zone deals. But the one thing I love about their app is the seat view, that you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you actually buy the ticket, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to that specific venue. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So let Game Time take all the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, my man. Let's get over to the your third player prop for this division. Where are we going?
We are going to let's go to Houston. We haven't been to Houston yet. This might be a little contrarian, but I like Dalton Schultz. I like his over. Passing yards sitting at 500.5. So I need him to get 501 this season. And the reason why I think this could be a little bit contrarian is because Houston bought in Stephon Diggs, of course, and there may be a situation that presents itself where there aren't enough balls to kind of go around, because we already know who this Houston Texans, wide receiver core. There's a lot of wide receivers. So everyone might not be happy here, but I think Schultz numbers seem to be impacted the most as far as his numbers going down. Last season, he caught 59 passes for 650 yards, and he's cleared 500 yards in 4 straight seasons. What I like the most about Dalton Schultz is how well him and CJ Stroud looked last season. They looked really, really well that season. He had 88 targets, but outside of the targets, the Texans were actually number 4 in EPA yards to tight ends. They were number 5 in success to tight ends, and they were number 8 in yards per attempt. So I don't think just because you already have a great wide receiver room, I don't think that he's not going to go to a security blanket. I looked at all of your wide receivers, for the Houston Texans, and Tank Dell's listed at 825, Stephon Diggs listed at 900, and then you got Collins listed at 975. Which this is what I think has dropped Dalton Schultz's projections so far. Last season, he ranked 15th in target shares, 11th in yards, and 14th in yards per route. And it feels like to me his projected production is dropped just a tad bit too low. So I'll buy in on Dalton Schultz, just thinking that another very young tight end has a really great relationship and rapport with this tight end and with his quarterback. And I don't see a lot really changing. If you guys have D'Amico Ryans again, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, both staying the same. So I think Dalton Schultz number, coming all the way down to 500 is intriguing enough for me to take the over. I don't know who is going to get those targets between Dell and Diggs and Collins, but I think Dalton Schultz numbers, I don't think they come down here, So I'll take Dalton Schultz to go over his 500.5 receiving yards here, minus 115.
So I also took a wide receiver to go over for this Texans team. And I think the conversation for this Texans team is going to be, what are you going to get from that running back room? And I'm not sure going to get a whole heck of a lot. Joe Mixon is entering the twilight years of his career. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be productive or not. But there's still a battle of who's going to be the backup running back for this team. And I don't think it's going to be Damian Pierce. It might be Cam Akers. It might be some of the other guys that they're trying out here during the preseason. But I think this team is going to be a very, very pass-happy offense. And I think that there's going to be enough to go around for at least two guys. And like you mentioned, I think Dalton Schultz is going to be one of those guys. He came on, I don't want to say in the second half of the season last year for this team. I think more in case point because Tank Dell had went down. And we know the chemistry that Tank Dell and CJ Stroud have already developed. I mean, they're really, really good friends already. So I think that connection is going to be there. More so, I think, for touchdowns. I think if you want to take an over for Tank Dell, maybe look at his touchdowns. But I couldn't talk you off with Dalton Schultz. I mean, look, he had a great season last year for this team. I think the targets are still going to continue being there for him. And you're not asking a whole lot, right? It's not like we're asking him to get 700, 800, 900 receiving yards here, right? And again, the Texans do play a first place schedule, obviously being the AFC South champions last year. But I think that this is an opportunity for Dalton Schultz to shine in this offense here as well. I did take Stephon Diggs to go over on his receiving yards, Chris, and I think this is probably going to be the most square play that I'll have this season as far as when it comes to season-long player props. So number one, when they did trade for him, they converted the final 3 years, or they took off the final 3 years of his contract and turned it into a contract year for Stephon Diggs. And whether that's going to be in the future with the Texans or not, we'll see. But obviously, when you're in a contract year, you want to go out there and put up the numbers because, that's probably one of the last things that a team that's interested in you is going to look at. But also the fact is that we know what Stephon Diggs is, right? He's going to demand the football. And we've seen, I don't want to call it tantrums, but him demanding the football when he was with the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. But you also take a look at what he's done in his career, Chris. Since the 2016 season, he's had at least 900 or more receiving yards for when he was with the Vikings, and then obviously when he was with the Buffalo Bills. And I understand that he was the number one receiver, and Nico Collins came out last season and had a competent quarterback, and he flourished last season. That's one of the main reasons I really did like Nico Collins to go over on his receiving yards last year, and he absolutely crushed it. But I think that this ball will be spread around, and from preseason, what I've been able to see, that it's been Nico Collins, it's been Stephon Diggs, it's been Dalton Schultz as well. So I think it's a little bit correlated that, again, if you like CJ Stroud to go over on his passing yards, that obviously these guys are going to get over their receiving yards as well. So Stephon Diggs over 900.5 receiving yards, just based off, again, contract year for him. He is still a number one option on this team, and I think that he still has it in him, and he has that breakout ability to get the yards after the catch as well, or even be that downfield threat as well for this Texans team, as he's been throughout his career. So I took Stephon Diggs over 900.5 receiving yards for this upcoming season. Chris, I honestly thought it was going to be 1,000, but I'll take a 100-yard discount here.
Yeah, I think the sports books are kind of thinking what I was thinking, of like who takes the step back in production. And I mean, how can I fault you for wanting to, play Stephon Diggs over, especially when he continues to go over this number? Just because he's in a new system doesn't mean he's going to lack production, of course. And like you mentioned, I think the key point that we both agree on here is like what are we getting from Joe Mixon and the rest of that running back room?
Yeah.
Like you said, I don't think we get a lot. So I think there is some leeway, especially for a number that you thought would be closer to 1,000 than 900. As long as Stephon Diggs can stay healthy, and this offensive line can continue to protect CJ Stroud in the way that they did last season, because when he was protected, he played really, really good football. And if you kind of expect that to happen again, especially with the Texans pushing all their chips into the middle and really going for this thing this year, I think all of those things. And last one you mentioned, contract year, that might overexceed everything that we're talking about, right? We know he could be a little feisty when he doesn't get the football, and if he's not getting the football during contract year, he may be pouting and moaning a little bit more. But it all comes from a good place, and we do expect them to have a really good season this year.
Yeah, 100%. So again, like we mentioned, we talked about the Texans extensively. There's a lot of hype around this team, but rightfully so on paper. One of the more talented teams. But we'll see if it really does come into fruition and they're able to, let alone even win this division. Because I think that, we talked about the Colts. Maybe Jacksonville is improved. Maybe they don't need to beat the favorite, like you mentioned, to win this division. And again, from the Titans, it could be a huge year for them as well. With Will Levis and that wide receiving group that they do have there. So, maybe not the sexiest division like when we talked about the AFC North and the NFC North divisions, but I think there's still a lot of intrigue in this AFC South division. Honorable mentions, Chris. Anything else you want to mention that you were looking at that you couldn't possibly get there to, but were considering?
Yeah, big one here. If I'm interested in your thoughts, Evan Ingram. I saw his touchdown prop sitting at 3.5, and it said it's juiced. It's only available, I think, on Caesars as well, minus 120 to minus 125-ish. I just think without Calvin Ridley being there, and now you got Zay Jones going as well, I could see Trevor Lawrence potentially utilizing this tight end a little bit more based on comfortability. We kind of talked about that. I kind of feel like same thing with Dalton Schultz just a tad bit as well, even though that wide receiver group has changed just a tad bit. Last season, Evan Ingram led this team in targets with 143. He had an 80% completion percentage on passes thrown his way. And granted, Jacksonville does go out to add more wide receivers. You get Gabe Davis. Brian Thomas Jr. is somebody they drafted that's, expected to stretch the field for them as well. But I still think Evan Ingram, big tight end, 6'3", 240. I still think he can find the end zone 4 times. Even though Trevor Lawrence played in 16 games last season, he was banged up a ton. A lot of nagging injuries throughout the season for him. If this, supposedly much improved offensive line can keep him upright, I do think that he can kind of return to 2022 Trevor Lawrence, where he threw, I think, 24, 25 touchdowns and had single-digit interceptions, which should give, somebody like Evan Ingram the potential to score more. So I thought about Evan Ingram, if he's gone over he's had 4 touchdowns or more in back-to-back seasons, but barely getting there to that number. And this season, to me, I just kind of feel like the Jaguars are going to be a little more pass heavy as well. They also face they have a pretty, daunting schedule specifically to start. You got Miami, Cleveland, Buffalo, and Houston. So I think utilizing the tight end will potentially be healthy, be good for them. And I like his target shares last season. I think that can stay the same. So yeah, Evan Ingram over his 3.5 touchdowns, was the way that I was leaning, but didn't quite get to yet. What about yourself?
Yeah, so just off of Evan Ingram, 2 straight seasons with the Jaguars here, played in all 17 games, close to 100 targets in 2022, had 98, finished with 4 touchdowns. Last season was a big year for him. 143 targets, 114 receptions, had 4 touchdowns there as well. So, obviously a guy of his stature, I think that he's definitely going to be a target in the red zone, 6'3", 240 pounds, for a guy like Evan Ingram. And like you mentioned, this offense may be a little bit more pass heavy for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. And again, we talked about the departure of Calvin Ridley from this team. I'm not really sold on their wide receiver depth. What kind of tells you that you have options now, or maybe even more targets coming Evan Ingram's way to what we saw from last year for him. So I like that look. Travis Etienne was another guy that I was interested in, but it's just the fact that he has, injury history, and I know he's said all the right things, that he has to become one of those versatile wide receivers, something similar to like the Christian McCaffreys, because we've talked about how that position is pretty much changing, right? You have to be a pass catching wide receiver as well if you want to have success in this league. And I think that for Evan Ingram, whether you want to look at his receiving yards, maybe something on a weekly basis, maybe not something season long here, Chris, but I think I'm really intrigued by Travis Etienne for this upcoming season, just because he has that, breakability, and just, be able to make, the plays in the open field. I think that when they look at his receiving touchdowns or total touchdowns, receiving yards, something like that for season long, I think that might be worth a look for him. Jonathan Taylor, I was intrigued by there, Chris. I think he could have, return to form where, prior to the injuries and what we saw last year for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the guy's an absolute monster. I think this guy has definitely, obviously, the potential to get to 2,000 yards in his career, in a single season here. And I'm just trying to pull up his numbers on what he's done throughout his career. So last season, like you mentioned, we were talking about it, that he only played in a handful of games, which was only 10 games last year, dealing with the contract situation and injuries. And 2022, right, only played 11 games. But prior to that, rookie season, 15 games, 1,169 rushing yards, 5 yards per carry. His big year was in 2021, right? 17 games, 1,811 rushing yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns. So I think he's might be a great fantasy option. He's still only 25 years old. I think that he's going to get the touchdowns like we talked about, especially since I'd like Anthony Richardson to go under on his passing touchdowns. So I think Jonathan Taylor, if you want to go either rushing touchdowns for the season or rushing yards for the upcoming season, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on JT here.
Yeah, I think definitely using him as a goal line back. We know what he's capable of doing as long as he can stay healthy, and we definitely wish health on him this season. The opposite of coming off one of those injuries, where you don't play, where you only play in a handful of games, is you typically have fresher legs, so that bodes well for him to go over. Either whether it's rushing yards, because we do expect a balanced attack, or you wanted to go with the touchdowns. I think either one of those could be are definitely in play, especially if we're both kind of thinking the same thing about Anthony Richardson. Now, granted, Anthony Richardson, I don't want people to misconstrue our words. We do think that there's upside. Like maybe he plays and overperforms, a lot better than both of us are thinking. But it still doesn't mean he can't go under his touchdown prop, as you mentioned. And if we're expecting that, it kind of correlates with Jonathan Taylor to do well this season, specifically on the ground. So I like that a lot. Like I said, Shane Steichen believes in running the football as well, coming over from Philly. So I think that you got that in your back pocket. And then as far as Travis Etienne, I agree with you on Travis as well. I do think, looking at that wide receiver depth, I do think, another guy that he feels really, really comfortable with. Him and Evan Ingram have been a part of this offense. No Calvin Ridley, no Zay Jones. So Travis Etienne is somebody that can make plays out of the backfield. You can dump it off to him. So like we'll probably be targeting. I'm probably be right there with you, targeting Travis Etienne on a weekly basis, maybe to go over receiving yards, depending on who their opponent is, or trying to find a way to make some money with Travis Etienne throughout the season for sure. If I don't take him before the season starts on a season long prop.
Yeah. Right now, the number for Jonathan Taylor rushing touchdowns for the season's at 8.5. Last season, in 10 games that he did play, he had 7 rushing touchdowns. 4 in the year where he only played 11, but then the first 2 seasons, 11 rushing touchdowns, and like we mentioned, that second year, 18 rushing touchdowns. So I think this might be one that I do add to the season long player props here for Jonathan Taylor over on his touchdowns here at 8.5. You get a -108 right now, currently over on FanDuel. And then there also Caesars has over 9.5 at +120 if you want some plus odds for Jonathan Taylor to get into double-digit rushing touchdowns for this upcoming season. Anything else, Chris, from honorable mentions before we get to best bets?
Nah, man, I think we did a pretty good job. I think we did a pretty good job with the division overall.
All right, let's wrap it up here with our best bets for the AFC South division. Chris, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I think I'll go Will Levis. I like Will Levis a lot. Number 33,350 and a half, and I'm gonna go over on his passing yards. As we mentioned, man, I love the weapons around him. Bringing in Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati, still got DeAndre Hopkins there. You bring in Calvin Ridley coming over, and I think Nick Foles, like I said, man, him being a previous play caller in the shift of. This team will not have Derrick Henry in the backfield anymore. They go to a guy you're betting the under on, which I agree with, in Tony Pollard. So
yep.
I'm just thinking that Tennessee is going to pass the ball a little bit more this season. I expect them to be trailing, a lot. Like I said, face the 6th hardest schedule. So we'll go Will Levis over his 3,350 and a half passing yards here. Definitely shop around for the best number because I see this already up to above 3,400 as well. So I'll go Will Levis up and over him,
Yep, couldn't talk you off. I think obviously with the weapons that they do have there with Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, I think this offense is really primed to have a good year led by Mr. Will Levis at that quarterback position now for the Tennessee Titans. And one more point I'll add, right? Will Levis, he's sat been that second string or third string quarterback. I think that's only beneficial for some of these quarterbacks, man, because we've seen a lot of these guys that just get thrown into the fire and some are able to perform. I think it's a very small percentage, but there's some, most I think that do get thrown into the fire that just aren't able to perform in that transition. I always say from, coming from the collegiate level to, the NFL, sometimes it's a hard one, especially when you're expected to be that day one starter. But I think there's only a handful of guys that can really do that. And, we'll see. I think that Will Levis, like you mentioned, will have a big season. But I think just, being able to sit back for a couple seasons, just watching and now, being the starting quarterback for this team, I think that's just only going to be really, really beneficial for a guy like Will Levis.
He also throw bombs, I was looking at this as a rookie last season. 22.4 of Will Levis's attempts were 20 yards or more down the field. That was easily the highest, the league's highest rate. Almost double the league's highest rate last season. So you expect the bombs to DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, he gonna throw them. Got arm power for days. Let's go, Will.
All right, for my best bet, it's one of the 2 unders. I think I'm gonna go with Tony. I'm gonna go Anthony Richardson under 18.5 passing touchdowns. A lot of things that it just makes too much sense, right? Not really sold on the wide receiving group here outside of Michael Pittman. But you're a dual threat quarterback like Anthony Richardson, right? Under 18.5 passing touchdowns. He could run the football, and we just talked extensively about Jonathan Taylor and what he means to this offense behind that offensive line. And I just don't think the passing touchdowns will be there for him. I'm not sure if he'll play in all 17 games this season for the Colts there as well. Obviously you don't wish injury upon anybody, but at least last year where he was dealing with a shoulder injury, that's something significant, obviously, when you're a quarterback and you utilize your arm and your shoulders to throw the football. So I'll go Anthony Richardson under 18.5 passing touchdowns for this upcoming season as my best bet for the AFC South division. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Propcast AFC South division and season-long player props in the books here. We have 3 more divisions left, which will be the NFC South later this week, and then we will get to the East divisions next week, starting with the AFC East, and then we'll wrap it up with the NFC East as our final division preview. But again, 5 in the book here. Do yourselves a favor, go back, listen to the ones that we have already done. A lot of great information that Chris and I discussed on those pods. And it's honestly it's so fun to go through these season-long player props for these guys and just kind of talk it through and see how it plays out for the season there. But Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we go our separate ways?
Nah, man, this was fun. I'm excited to continue, and of course, the more we continue, like you said, it's only we over at half, so definitely go back and check out the other episodes if you guys missed them, for insight and analysis. But also, every time we do an episode, we're just getting closer to the season, which is really exciting, man. So excited for the season, and looking forward to continuing to break these down next week. Well, actually, Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah, we'll be back Thursday for the NFC South. Maybe not the most intriguing division, the NFC South, but we're still going to go through it for you guys. And then, like I mentioned, the 2 East divisions left before we wrap it up for our season player props. And then, like Chris mentioned, before we know the season, we'll be here for our weekly Sunday props. And of course, we'll be doing the Thursday night game as well for the Propcast. So a great reminder, if you haven't already, subscribed to the Propcast. Whether it's on Spotify, whether it's on Apple, go ahead and do so. And then also do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel here, because we'll be going live during the regular season on our YouTube channel on the march to 1,000. So hopefully we can get there by, honestly, I hope the end of September we can get 1,000 subscribers and we can just grow the show here, because I feel like we are one of the more unique shows across, the betting platform, where we just discuss player props here. And I will say that we are pretty damn good at it ourselves. All right, we'll be back later this week, NFC South, so look out for us then. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.